Hello, it's me again, and Paddy down here too. One of my two cats who look almost identical. Betsy was here last night. She was actually sitting here, but you couldn't see her. Paddy knows I'm talking about him, so he's having a wriggle. um, right, so last night I talked about the different platforms you could use for your website. If you didn't watch that, go back and have a look because it's very interesting-ish. And I'm going to presume you've watched that when I talk tonight. So if I refer back to it and I haven't, you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch that. I think it's about 20 minutes long, something like that. So tonight I'm going to talk about domains. I'm not going to go into too much technical detail because it's not that interesting really. I'm just going to tell you what they are, what they do, where'd you get them. So if you think of a domain as like same as a telephone number or your house address, it basically tells the internet, so your browser, when you type it in, it tells your browser what page to load. So it's like a telephone number. You can get them separately to your hosting. You can get them at the same time as your hosting. And you need to purchase, you're actually renting a domain. You never own a domain outright. You rent it for an amount of time. So, hello, Natasha. Oh, that's great. But so the littles are asleep, I presume. So you never actually own a domain outright. You rent it. So you make an agreement with the registrar that you will pay them a certain amount of money for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Normally, it's normally 1 or 2 years. And then you have to renew it. And if you don't renew it, then somebody else can get that domain. So there are loads of types of domain. In the last couple of years, loads and loads have been released. So the traditional ones in England, well, the UK, it's .co.uk, and then America's traditional domain is .com, which would stand for commercial. Our version is .co, as in, I guess, company. .uk, so that tells people that you're a UK based company. You can only have a .uk address if you're based in the UK. .com you can have anywhere in the world. So there's a company in the UK called Nominet who officiate over all of every domain that ends in .uk. So they're like, how could I describe them? They're the official register. They're not the registrar in the same way that you buy one, but they run the whole thing. Basically, they make sure that when you apply for certain domains, you are who you say you are. For example, you couldn't get a .sch.uk unless you're a school. They double check and make sure you are who you say you are. Again, .ltd, so limited, you have to be a limited company, so .ltd.uk, you have to be a limited company to get it. So as a small business owner, you're going to want either .co.uk, and there's also the Welsh version as well. Now you can get Cymru and .wales, I think. So if you're in Wales, you might want to do that. So you can have .co.uk or .com. Those are the two main ones. Then you can have all sorts of other things. So I've got a .co. You can have .game, I think. There's so many, I can't even think of them. There's loads and loads and loads of sort of really novel ones, but I would work against that. .co in particular, don't do it. I've got katemalloy.co. Bad idea. People always think you've dropped the M or you've dropped the .uk. So I've put .co, and there's actually the reason I had .co is there was .co.uk was taken. katemalloy.co.uk was taken. Incidentally, I'm on here as Kate Litt. That will be my married name, but my current name is Kate Malloy. So that's my old business. So I had katemalloy.co. Somebody else had katemalloy.co.uk, and they kept getting emails to me And for the first couple of months, they forwarded them to me, but obviously after a while, she got fed up. So I didn't hear anything. So that was a big mistake. My current web address is katelit.com, which I like because it's short and to the point. I also think that .com in many ways appears more, well, it's more international. And I would always recommend, if possible, get .co.uk and .com, because then you've got everything. So people, if they can't remember how it ends, they're likely to put .co.uk or .com, and they will find you. The .com registrar is called VeriSign. So it's still pretty much run by the American government.com, but VeriSign are the private company that run the whole thing. So you've got Nominet, who, if you've ever bought a .co.uk domain, rented, I should say, not bought because you don't own it, you'll see that as you're going through, you get this whois registration where you have to give your name and details. And that's part of the requirement for having a .something.uk domain. It's just so they know who's got what, basically. You can have these privacy additions so that people can't look up and see who you are, and who owns what domains. But honestly, I mean, it's up to you. You can have that if you want, but there's no danger in having people knowing that you own certain domains. I've never bothered having privacy on any of mine. So you've got Nominet and VeriSign. They own the .uk.com, and then you have your registrar. So that's who you would buy your domains through and who you would have them registered with. So you places like GoDaddy and 123reg and names.co.uk, and there's about 1,000 that hold the license to do .com, and probably the same again for .co.uk and others. So there's so many to choose from. Obviously, I'd say GoDaddy are probably the most well known. But anytime you get hosting, you're going to go through a process where they ask you, have you got a domain? And if you haven't, they'll sell your domain, and they'll do it through one of the registrars probably, or they'll be a registrar themselves. Who to buy from is a big question. Honestly, it's all much of a muchness. Domains don't require much customer service, or that you'll basically do it on price. My recommendation would be, buy your domain through the same people that you're having your hosting, because it just makes everything much more straightforward and simple. If you've already got domains with several different companies, you can transfer them all to one. You can transfer them all to your hosting company. You can keep them as they are. It makes no difference in the way that everything works. It's just from an admin point of view, it's easier if you've got everything in one place. So how it would work is you go through, you purchase the domain, so you agree that you're going to pay them 5, 10, 15 pounds or whatever for 1, 2, 3 years worth of having the domain. And then the domain just sits there and it waits to be told what to do. Then if you set up hosting with the same company, that company, through all the different processes that the hosting companies have, will then tell that domain when somebody tell their system, when somebody puts this domain in, send them to this space, and that's where your website is. So it's really just an address. If you purchase a domain and don't do anything with it, nothing will happen. It just sits there waiting to be told where to tell people to go. So that's the sort of technical side of it. It's not it's not interesting really. I mean, I quite like it, but I'm a bit of a geek, so the whole technical side of it's not that interesting. Really, what you need to know is, it doesn't really matter who you buy them from. I would recommend buying your domain from the same place that hosts your website, or transferring your domains over. If you've got your domain with a different company and you'll have your hosting with a different company, you'll need to tell that domain that you have to change something called the DNS, which is forgotten. You change a couple of bits of some numbers and code and things, and say, instead of looking here, look over here. So when you set up your hosting, that's something that you'll be told to do, but we're going to talk about hosting tomorrow, so I'm not going to go into that too much now. But that's really straightforward. And most domain registrars now, if you go to them and you say, I've got my hosting set up with this company, they'll tell you exactly how to point it over there. So there's nothing to be worried about. Don't, for definite, we're going to talk about hosting tomorrow, but for definite, don't just get hosting with the company that you've got your domains with just because you've got your domains with them. Because somebody like GoDaddy is not the best for hosting, but they're fine for domains. I won't go over hosting now, but when we talk about hosting tomorrow, you'll see why hosting is the one to worry about in terms of customer service. Domains, just worry about the price, really. So in terms of what you should have when you choose your domain, gone are the days where your domain is used by search engines to find a specific website. So back in the day, it would be if you were selling cheap bras. I don't know why that's coming to my head, but if you were selling cheap bras, then you might want cheapbras.co.uk or .com, because that would have come to the top of the list when people search for it in search engines. That's not really the case anymore. It can inform people what you do, but it's not the be all and end all when it comes to SEO. Now it's much more important to have the content on the website is what Google and the other search engines look at. So the domain itself, it doesn't really matter what it is. I would always say keep it short, so that it's easy to fit on your branding materials, because you don't want this really, really long thing, because then you have to have it tiny, tiny on your business cards, tiny on your flyers, anything else, adverts online or whatever, and you can't see it. So short and sweet, something that people will remember. So if your business has a really, really long name, consider using initials somewhere or just shortening the name down in some way. If that's not possible, then just have the business name, because people are more likely to remember, I can't think of anything, a really long business name that rolls off the tongue than they are to remember initials and hyphens and all this kind of stuff. So if you can shorten it in a memorable way, then do that. If you can't, then just keep it the full thing, because these days it doesn't really matter. People don't generally type in domains anymore. It's more often than not, it's a click, because they see it online, click through, etc. I mean, just try and think, when's the last time you typed out a domain in full? It doesn't really happen. It's more about how it appears so people can remember, and it's all part of your branding as well. So the domain needs to relate to the other parts in some way. For me, there's nothing more suspicious than seeing a domain that is something like cheapbras.co.uk when the company's called something completely different. It doesn't feel natural and right to me. For me, it should all sort of link together. So that's what I would say anyway. I mean, other people, I'm sure other marketing people would say different things, and for different industries it works slightly differently as well. But I would always say try and stick to your business name so people can remember it. If you can't stick to your business name, then something memorable, because obviously there's times when you go in, you try to get your business name, it's not there. If it's not available, you can add things like UK at the end. So for katemalloy.co.uk, I could have potentially had kate-malloy.co.uk, or Kate Malloy UK, or Kate Malloy Graphics, or things like that. So you can add extra words in, but I would try and keep some element of your company name or what you're trading as within the domain, so that it all ties together, people can remember what it is, and you're sort of recognizable if you just have your link there. But in terms of SEO, the domain doesn't make any difference really. SEO being search engine optimization, because you'll hear that all the time but not necessarily know what it is. But the domain itself doesn't have any impact really on what the search engines pull up. So that's domains. Let me just have a look at my notes. yeah, no, I've covered everything. I think it's not a hugely interesting part of building a website. It's relatively important, but don't get too hung up on it. I see people really stressing out because they can't find their perfect domain. Or the thing I would say is, if you get an idea for a business, this is what I do. If I get an idea, I'll instantly go buy the domain. I've done it so many times. I've had dozens of domains that I've paid for a year of cover and then never done anything with them, just let expire. But it's online real estate is what people call it. So if you, even if you're not ready to do your website, just get the domain ready. I would say it's less than, they're normally about 10-15 pounds a year tops. And that the cost depends on what, whether you had .co.uk.com or some of the novel ones. The novel ones can be about 25 quid a year. But just get it ready, because if it's sitting there doing nothing, it doesn't matter. But you know you've got it, so that nobody else is going to have it. So I would say just buy them. I had, I think, about 12 domains at one point for 2 websites. Because I love domains. I get a business name idea and then just buy the domain, because that's what I do. And also, if you have, if you were to set up a membership site, or you have umbrella brands. So if you've got your main brand, so my main brand is Kate Lit, but I've also got the Brilliance Alliance, and I'm also going to be having Design Brilliance as well. So I've got those domains because although I do my graphics and things as Kate Lit, the membership site that's launching in a few weeks, by the way, which is going to be called the Brilliance Alliance. Obviously, that's separate. That's not me doing design. That's teaching other people how to do their own graphic design and teaching them how to do their own website. So that is separate to the Kate Lit stuff. So I've got that domain, and that will point to a specific part of my normal website. So you only need to have one website, but you can have multiple domains pointing to different pages on the website, different areas of the website. So domains are really just a way of telling the person looking at the internet, well, telling the internet where the person looking at the internet wants to be, where they want to go to and what they want to see. So you can have as many domains as you want, basically pointing to the same website. You could have a different one for every page. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. So yeah, that's it. So I'll be back tomorrow, and I'm going to talk about hosting. I'm going to tell you my favourite host, who I think you should use because they are number one. Well, actually, I've got 2. I've got one American based and I've got one UK based. I'll tell you all about those, and I'll tell you the most important things when it comes to choosing your web host. And I'll get a little bit technical, not majorly technical, because you don't want to know all that stuff. You just want to know how to get it going and make sure it's all set up correctly. Yeah, and then on Thursday I'm going to talk about WordPress, not in great detail again. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit so that you can have a think about whether that's the right way to go. I think it is, and that's what I want you to do. But it feels intimidating and scary for some people, so I'm just going to talk about it and try and make it less scary, because I think you need to do it. I don't want you to use a website builder. I want you to feel confident enough to do WordPress. So I'm going to talk about it a bit, and then you can throw questions at me and see if there's anything I can do to make that easier for you. So again, ask me any questions on here. Ask me any questions on the group or in my page, or send me a message or whatever, and I'll see what I can do to help. I'm just going to read this question here. Mine should be Storybook Buzz rather than the Storybook Buzz. I would drop the, yeah, unless you have to keep the. If Storybook Buzz isn't available, then put the in. But the, it really doesn't. I had the Vintage Directory. I really wanted it. My one of my first businesses was the Vintage Directory, which was a directory website. I wanted Vintage Directory, but it was gone, so I had to have the. So if what you actually want is gone, then the can be added on, but I wouldn't recommend it because it just complicates things. So yeah, Storybook Buzz, either .co.uk.com. Go now and see if it's available and buy it. If it is, that's what I'd say. So I'll see you tomorrow, and let me know if you've got any questions, or if there's anything else you'd like me to cover in one of these videos, and I'll do that for you as well. All right then, bye.